Good afternoon. My name is Michelle Clemens. I originally started my bachelor's in elementary education when a friend of mine introduced Texas A&M Commerce and the Organizational Leadership Program. I decided to pursue it thinking that leadership is something that I can take with me anywhere, whereas elementary education was a more focused degree. I wasn't exactly sure what the courses would entail, but I knew it was something I was drawn to. I've always felt like I've had leadership qualities. Thinking back on it now, both my mom and my dad were in leadership roles. I just didn't know that growing up. It was a part of their makeup and it became a part of mine. In my 20s and most of my 30s, I didn't have a job where I thought I could develop any of my leadership qualities except for when I was volunteering. Looking back at that, that's where my natural leadership came out. When I transferred to Texas A&M 2 years ago, I still had a few classes to complete before I started my majors courses. During this time, I worked as an office manager for an elementary school and was volunteering and attending a startup church. I think at that time, the church is where I really started thinking about using my leadership skills. I was given the opportunity to build a food pantry from the bottom up, and it was during that first year that I learned about myself, my insecurities, my abilities, and so many areas that I could grow in. Looking back, the one thing I wish Texas A&M organization, leadership organization program would have offered was a mentor. I really could have used someone to bounce ideas off of, someone who was smarter than me that could tell me how the things I was learning could be used in my day-to-day life. My mind always seemed to be seeking out more information and understanding on how something played out into something else. I do have a wonderful husband, though, and have been able to bounce ideas off him. He's also brutally honest and brings a totally different perspective to the table, which I definitely appreciate. What I thought leadership was 2 years ago was just this: the president, the governor, and a CEO. I never really dove into traits or characteristics. In my position as an office manager, I led a very small team of 3 people. Then I felt like my only job was to make sure that they were doing what they were supposed to do, and I was doing what I was supposed to do. I'm embarrassed to look back and say that I never factored in relationships or communication. While we had those things, they weren't anywhere close to where they should have been. I want to go through each of my majors classes now and show what I personally took out of each of those classes. The first one was Issues in Organizational Leadership. Issues in Organizational Leadership was the first majors class I took and was where I learned about the differences in a manager and a leader and traits that they share. This is also where I learned about the different theories like the great man theory and the trait theory of leadership. It was nice to start out with a backstory, like where it all began and build from there. Also in this class is where I learned about teams for the first time. Learning about teams came up in several of my classes and was a huge part of my understanding. The second was data-driven decision making. This was a 2-part class. If I'm being honest, these were my hardest classes for me. Any part of math portion of classes scares me. When they started to talk about mean, median, and mode, my mind puts up this huge roadblock, and it's hard for me to get that out of my head. It's interesting, though, that I do this because I really enjoy working with budgets and finance. After talking to a girlfriend who is a CPA, she recommended really learning the vocabulary. Her recommendation was that if I learn the vocabulary, the numbers are easy. So for these 2 classes, I really honed in on the meaning of the words, and that was really helpful. The part that stuck with me the most was learning about key point indicators and collecting data. I naturally ask a lot of questions, so learning what it means to ask questions and how to capture that data was intriguing to me. Also, asking a broad question can lead to a broad answer. I liked seeing that breakdown. Is the question budget related or customer service related, or how do you interpret data? That was interesting as well to me. The third was behavior, ethics, and leadership. This was also a 2-term course and were my most favorite classes. During these courses, I really had a lot of aha moments. A few of the things that stood out to me, and I'll definitely take with me moving forward, were about morals and ethics and the difference between them. I learned a lot about what my morals were and how they played into leadership for me. Also, it gave me a chance to look back at my values and other leaders that I have run across in my life and how they were like. It helped me really see why I haven't cared for certain leaders in the past and ones that I really liked and why. Another thing that really stuck in my head was how hard it would be to be a whistleblower. Most people have to work, they can't afford to miss a paycheck. And when your ethical values are tested daily, not only how emotionally and physically draining that would be, what a struggle that would be, but that you may actually lose your job over it as well. I can't imagine how hard a decision that would be for someone to make. It made me start thinking why in exit interviews, so many people don't say why they're really leaving. It's almost like they've run out of hope for humanity, or they don't believe that telling the truth will make a difference. I think that can be changed. So put that in there. I believe in this class is where I also learned about the dynamics of groups and teams, like storming, norming, and performing. This is one of the things that I wish all people knew about. Specifically for me, I worked in an elementary school, and the teachers worked in groups within their grade levels. I would see so many times that the groups would argue between themselves and watch how long it took for them to actually come together and start like meshing together. Um, at one point, I printed out the page on storming, norming, and performing and gave it to one of the teachers who had been coming to me in confidence and shared it with her. I was telling her how normal it was and that they would work it out. And I explained what I was learning in this class and how I really thought it would help them. And I said, like, the hardest part is for you guys working it out is figuring out where you belong in your team. And I told him if all of them knew, or I told her, if all of you guys knew about this, that you'd get through it so much faster. And I gave her the printout. She actually came back to me, I want to say about 2 weeks later. It might have been a little longer than that. And she said that they talked about it. She talked about it with her team. There were a few tears shed, but they really felt like they were going to be able to work it out. And my question was, why are more leaders not like this? Was this a coachable moment? Like, was this a leadership for me, like a leadership role for me? It really wasn't my place to be her leader, but I felt like a leader in that moment. Um, and then I thought, how could more leaders be more approachable when it comes to how their employees feel about asking for direction? Uh, do we as leaders give the impression that asking for direction is a sign of weakness? I don't want that to be the case with me. The next class was leadership theory. Leadership theory was also 2 courses, and again, it emphasized the differences in leadership and management. I learned that I really enjoyed management. Management, I guess, versus leadership. I know I'm good at the management side of it. I love structure. I love building policies and procedures. But I found that when I'm most passionate about something, I have a way of rubbing off that same feeling to other people. I didn't realize that was a leadership trait. Another thing I learned was the different types of power as influence. I remember having a conversation with my husband about how I've always been drawn to people with expert power, and that it's probably why I want people to see me that way. I want to learn something well enough that people see me as an expert in that field, and also that they know they could come to me for anything at any time, and I want to help them get better at what they're doing. I want them to become experts as well in whatever field it is. Another thing that has stuck with me is diversity and multiculturalism. As leaders, do we seek out learning different cultures? Do we ask enough questions? If we want to build an empire, do we seek out the ways of other cultures? Should we consider the ways that other cultures do things and how they might work here? In the United States, we're a huge melting pot. What can we bring from other cultures to help us become more diverse? I really, really think it's important to have a really diverse group. I think it brings a lot to the table and will help you see things that you might not see on your own. The next class was Leading Change. This class really honed in on change management, how to recognize change in both profit and nonprofit organizations and why it's important. Something that stood out to me was how we need to make change for the right reason, a more utilitarianism approach. Are we doing it for the good of all of our stakeholders or most of our stakeholders? And then how are we making change so that even on the smallest level, it's implemented and employees are embracing it? An example of this that I'm experiencing secondhand through my husband's work is this. He is the director of a large restaurant chain, and currently they're implementing a screen system in the kitchens. Right now, the kitchen staff is used to yelling out orders and responding to what needs to be made in specific areas based on that verbal communication. The new screen system will make it so that instead of yelling out the order, it will display on a screen. There's still communication, but instead of verbal, it's a visual communication. It's a hard concept for many of the staff because they are all used to working in verbal kitchens. There's a natural pushback from the kitchen because they like the way it's been running and they don't see a need for change. Now it's my husband's responsibility to explain why this will help them in the future, why the changes are being made, and set the kitchen up for success going forward. In one kitchen, he's had more pushback than in others. Although the kitchen expressed verbal communication, that they appreciated verbal communication, he decided to show them a video of a well-known, much larger chain restaurant in action using that visual system. It was like a light bulb came on for them. While they thought they preferred verbal orders, they responded well to the visual presentation and then the explanation as to why this would help them work smarter and not harder. That was a really good example for me in that class, how it's been used in real life. Finally, my capstones. I really appreciated these classes because it gave me an opportunity to put everything I learned together. I really felt like I had the opportunity to share my experiences, add in the new things I've learned, and show them with examples. Sometimes you feel like you have to write what you want people to hear, and it was nice to be able to articulate what I had learned in the way I'd learned it, and in a way that was comfortable for me, and that you guys understood it. I appreciated all the feedback I received from my professors. I am one who always appreciates feedback, whether good or bad. I'm hoping to learn from them. So that was great for me. When I started this journey, I was an office manager for an elementary school. I did not feel as though I had the opportunity to really be a leader. I felt this huge desire to be challenged mentally, and that's when I started the organizational leadership program. I feel extremely lucky to have had several opportunities to practice the skills over this last couple years. I've learned in my position as a volunteer and in leadership in my church. I not only learned what to do right, but also what was wrong. I feel like I'm able to see into a picture now and not just at a picture. A few weeks ago, I accepted a position as administrative assistant to an operations chief for a large city near me. I really feel that what I learned here and how I was able to implement these new ideas propelled me forward into this position. I'm excited to take what I've learned and share it with others. I am a servant leader first and foremost. I believe in humility. I hope people see me as a leader who listens, who's not quick to make decisions without thinking about what is in the best interest of all people. But if I'm asked to make a quick decision, that they know I will always do what's ethically right. I'm a leader who believes everyone has something to bring to the table, and no one job is more important than another. I'm a leader who believes in communication. I believe in hard work and that any time is a good time to learn something new. Thank you.